Come on you, starting up. This is what was supposed to run today, not something to do with making miniatures. So I do apologise to anybody who was wondering why the heck suddenly that video that I had up just stopped for some strange reason. Because today we're going to talk about special improvised attacks rather than talking about or showing you how to make miniatures of any kind whatsoever. This was my intention for today. I do apologise if you were a bit confused as to what the heck was going on. It was just OBS doing its own thing, as it seems to do many times. It's very annoying for me as well. So I'm going to get started, but as always, ask your questions in the chat box. I will answer all of your questions, respond to your feedback at the end of the live stream. And if you have any input, by all means, put it in there as well. Okay, so let us get started. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, but in particular I want to talk about special improvised attacks. Now this is actually a video I'm doing after a discussion I had with somebody who's watched my channel before and who I work with, and he was talking about what does he do if one of his players decides to pick up a handful of ash and throw it into the enemy's eyes to try and blind them. And so the discussion of improvised attacks and how to deal with that was discussed. So these are special types of attacks that don't use standard melee attacks, that don't use special standard ranged attacks, and they're not a standard spell attack of any kind. They're using rules and elements and factors that we don't have any specifics around. So what I want you to do is turn to page 147 of the player's handbook. So from page 147 through to 148 there are details on improvised weapons, and this is where we're going to start, and then I'm going to give you a lot more information about how to deal with things that fall out of that particular couple of paragraphs. So essentially it's only like 3 paragraphs. Okay, so the first thing is that if you can find a weapon that already exists that's very similar to the thing that they are using, then I would suggest as the DM or Dungeon Master just using that particular weapon. Now it already gives you an example here of improvised weapons such as using a broken bottle, the leg for a table, a frying pan, a wagon wheel. You'd have to be pretty strong to wield a wagon wheel, or a dead goblin, which sounds very fun, but why not? And of course, if something like that is similar enough, so the table leg being similar enough to a club, you could, as the Dungeon Master, it's your option and your opinion that matters here. It's not set in concrete. You could say, well, it's going to function just like a club. So it's going to do the same amount of damage as a club, the leg from a table, and because you are, if the character is already proficient in using a club, then you will also allow them, hopefully, to use their proficiency modifier when they're making their attack roll. Now you do not have to do this. This is all up to you as the Dungeon Master. None of this is set in concrete, and it's completely up to you to make that final decision. But I would suggest that it does make an awful lot of sense, and I don't see anything wrong with doing that. So what happens if you get an object, or they try to use something that isn't going to sort of line up with the weapons that are listed on page 149 in the player's handbook, and it doesn't quite match, it doesn't quite fit, it's unusual in how they've used it or what they've decided to pick up and use. There's no resemblance whatsoever, and it states on page 148 that you could simply do 1d4 or a 4-sided dice worth of damage. Now if it's using strength, then add their strength modifier to that damage dice roll. Now the Dungeon Master can assign different types of damage dice depending on the object. You do not have to, okay? You do not have to use the 1d4 damage dice. It actually states in brackets the Dungeon Master assigns a damage type appropriate to the object. So that means that you can decide, okay, it's going to be piercing or slashing or bludgeoning or whatever it is going to be. It might be something completely different. You might even decide that the kind of weapon that they're using isn't going to remove hit points, that it's going to do something completely different, and that might be that it's going to impart some sort of effect or a condition, something like that. And so something like ash being thrown into your eyes wouldn't necessarily result in the enemy losing hit points, but maybe you would impose a condition, and maybe that would be the blind condition. They are blind for a certain period of time, and you might ask for a saving throw at the end of every round that particular creature has to deal with that condition. Those are all things you could do. Now, if a character is using a ranged weapon to make a melee attack, or a thrown melee weapon, so they're throwing something that isn't normally thrown, but it doesn't have the thrown property, then there are some rules around that. It's exactly the same, 1d4 damage, but you do not have to use that. That's just, really, think about this as just a guideline. And that thrown improvised weapon, maybe it's a ball bearing, it could be anything. So they suggest that a normal range would be 20 feet throwing. That would be fine with no disadvantage, but long range up to 60 feet, so beyond 20 feet and up to 60 feet would be disadvantage on that thrown weapon. Now, something like ash is not going to fly very far, or flower. It's going to probably only go about 5 feet, so like to the square or the position just adjacent to the character who's throwing the ash or the flower or whatever. So you can change the range on these things. So here is a guide for you in terms of determining how to work out something. First off, start with whatever they're trying to do in terms of a special attack. Is this a ranged attack or is it a melee attack? What sort of range, if you're going to use a ranged attack, how far can it go without having disadvantage? Is it something that they can throw a long way, or is it something that they can only throw a short distance? Then after you've determined whether it's a ranged or a melee attack of some kind, then you're going to start thinking about, do I use an attack roll or should I use a saving throw? Now, when it comes to an attack roll, I would suggest attack rolls make sense if you're targeting one creature and there's the concept of hitting or missing. Whereas something like a saving throw is more useful if you're affecting a certain area rather than a single target, or a saving throw would make sense if there's some sort of effect being imbued upon the target where they have to make a saving throw, whether that be strength, dexterity, intelligence, constitution, wisdom, or charisma. Or you're wanting to impose a condition. Those are the sorts of things that make sense for a saving throw. And then after that, with your special attack, do I do damage? Are there going to be hit points lost? Or is it more appropriate that there only be a condition imposed? Or should they lose hit points and get a condition? So there's 3 things you need to deal with after you determine whether you're going to use an attack roll or saving throw. Next, when it comes to saving throws, now attack rolls are pretty simple. When it comes to attack rolls, nice and simple, but saving throws are a bit more complicated. So what am I going to do? When do I use a strength saving throw? So being pushed or pulled, or drawn or dragged in a different location, okay, that requires strength and muscling up to stop from being shifted around. So anything that would result in them being pushed, maybe a wave hitting them, so your special improvised attack might be a wave falling against them, okay? Then you would use something like a strength saving throw. It makes perfect sense. Or maybe it's a dexterity saving throw. Maybe if they're throwing flour or ash, you decide that an attack roll could be used, but you could also use a saving throw because there's a chance to dodge out of the way. Okay, there's an opportunity to move and just put yourself in a better position. So dexterity saving throw for dodging out of the way. Intelligence saving throws are more suitable when you're trying to affect their mind. But when you're trying to affect their mind, it's more about their ability to memorize things. It's more about, can they process information? Whereas something like a wisdom saving throw also affects their mind, but it's their higher functioning. It's not their memory, it's not their ability to take on board information and process it. It's more about pushing everything together. Wisdom is one of those things where you're using your senses, but you're also using things like an intuition. So think in terms of that. Is it going to be affecting the creature in that way? Constitution is more suitable when you're dealing with things that will affect the body. So when I say affect the body, I mean internally, maybe even externally. So poisons, toxins, things that will change the chemistry of your body overall, rather than just one location. Whereas an intelligence or a wisdom saving throw are only affecting one location of the body, and that is essentially the brain. Okay, and then the last one, which can be a little bit tricky and often doesn't come up, and that's the charisma saving throw. Now these affect your personality. So if it's going to change their personality in some way, then maybe that will apply. Or the way they look, okay? It's going to affect how they look. Maybe it's going to change it. Maybe it's going to make them look better. Maybe it's going to make them look worse. It's going to change that in some way. So that's the easiest way I can explain how to use special improvised attacks. And I wanted to talk about special actions as well, but I feel like I'm going to save that for another video so I don't give you too much information all at once. Now, if you found this useful or informative, please share and like the video. If you haven't already subscribed, then maybe it's time to subscribe if you like this sort of content, because I do this sort of thing quite often. If you want to get notified when I go live or I publish a new video, then hit the bell button. That's either on the channel beside the subscribe button or underneath the video. Usually there's a little bell button. If you want to support my channel, then watching more of my videos is great. I've got about 400 of these things, and I do one pretty much every single day. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description there's affiliate links. You know the story, man. You buy something online, I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price, and you don't even have to buy the thing that's linked to if it's going through Amazon. Now, if you have any questions, now's the time to start punching them into the chat box. Otherwise, after the live stream, put a comment down below and I will get to your questions. I know I've been a little bit slow doing that, but I will answer your questions. I just need to assign some time, and that will happen. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I feel like that might have been a bit of a wrap up. I think thank you for everybody who decided to join and watch. That was great. Thank you very much. And I will see you tomorrow for another video.